War isn't just about ballistics, logistics, or strategy. If you spend enough time in the mud, staring down the barrel of a rifle, you learn that there is a fourth element, something intangible. Soldiers call it luck, chaplains call it divine intervention, but those of us who observe the history of combat know it as the miracle of the battlefield. It is the moment where the laws of probability shatter, where the impossible becomes the only reason you are still breathing. I am the sentry, and today I am going to take you into the deep jungle, to a grid square that doesn't exist on civilian maps, to tell you a story about a voice in the static that saved 6 men from certain death. The year was 1969. The location was the Asha Valley, a place the troops called the Valley of Death. The unit was a long-range reconnaissance patrol, call sign Echo 5. They were 6 men, led by a hardened staff sergeant named Miller. Miller was the kind of man who didn't believe in superstition. He believed in noise discipline, dry socks, and a full magazine. But what happened on the ridges of Hill 802 would challenge everything he knew about reality. Echo 5 had been inserted 3 days prior to locate a North Vietnamese Army regimental headquarters. They found it, but they also found that the regiment was hunting them. By the 3rd afternoon, the mission had gone catastrophic. The heavy monsoon rains had moved in, turning the jungle floor into a slurry of red clay and rotting vegetation. Visibility was less than 10 feet. The squad was compromised. They were running a fighting withdrawal, moving fast, hearts hammering against their ribs like caught birds. Behind them, the jungle was alive with the popping of AK-47s and the shouting of trackers. The enemy was closing the net. "Move! Keep moving!" Miller hissed, waving his men through a thicket of bamboo. They were exhausted, they were low on ammo, and worst of all, they were lost.
The canopy was so thick it scattered the radio waves. Their RTO, a kid named Vance, had been trying to raise base for extraction for 2 hours. All he got was white noise. The static was a wall, isolating them from the world. They reached a depression in the earth, a natural bowl surrounded by steep ridges. It was a tactical nightmare, a kill box. If they stayed, they died. If they climbed the ridges, they'd be silhouetted and shot. "Vance," Miller grabbed the RTO by the shoulder harness. "Get me a bird, get me artillery, get me something." Vance was shaking, water dripping off his helmet, twisting the dials on the PRC-25 radio. "Nothing, Sarge, just static. The storm's killing the signal." Then, it happened. The static on the radio didn't clear up. It didn't fade. It simply stopped. It was replaced by a hum, a carrier wave so clean it sounded like it was coming from the next room, not through miles of interfering atmosphere. A voice cut through. Calm, American, baritone. "Echo 5, this is Sunray. I have you visual. Do not, repeat, do not climb the eastern ridge." Miller froze. He grabbed the handset. "Sunray? Who is this? We have no Sunray on the net. Identify." "Listen to me, Miller," the voice said. It wasn't the hurried panic of a frantic command post. It was the voice of a man reading a weather report. "The NVA have a heavy machine gun set up on the eastern ridge. If you crest that hill, you're dead. Turn 270 degrees, west. There is a game trail beneath the fallen teak tree. Take it." Miller looked at his squad. They were looking at him with wide, terrified eyes. The enemy fire was getting closer. Leaves were being shredded above their heads. "Sarge," Vance whispered. "Who is that?" Miller didn't know, but he knew the eastern ridge felt wrong. His gut was screaming at him. He made a choice. "West. We go west. Find the tree." The squad scrambled, sliding through the mud, finding the massive fallen teak trunk the voice had mentioned.
Sure enough, hidden beneath the root system was a narrow animal tunnel through the brush. They dove into it just as the eastern ridge, the one they had planned to climb, erupted. Green tracers slashed through the air where they would have been standing. A heavy machine gun tore the foliage to shreds. If they had climbed that ridge, they would be meat. "Echo 5, the voice returned. "Sunray, hold position." Miller pressed the handset to his ear, chest heaving. "We're clear of the ridge. Who are you? Where are you transmitting from?" "Hold position," the voice commanded, ignoring the question. Count to 5, then run 40 meters to the rock outcropping. Why? We need to keep moving. Mortars, the voice said. Inbound. 3, 2, 1. The earth shook. Crump. 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 3 mortar rounds impacted exactly 40 meters ahead of them, right on the path they were sprinting along. The concussion wave slapped them, spraying mud and shrapnel. If they hadn't stopped, they would have run directly into the impact zone. The squad stared at the smoking craters. This wasn't just tactical advice. This was omniscience. The voice knew where the rounds were landing before they hit the ground. Move now, Sunray said. The smoke will cover you. Rock outcropping. Go. They ran. They didn't question it anymore. They ran through the smoke of the mortars that had been meant to kill them. For the next hour, the impossible game continued. The voice guided them through the labyrinth of the Ashau Valley with a precision that defied logic. Duck left, sniper in the canopy. Crack. A bullet embedded itself in the tree exactly where Vance's head had been a second before. Stop. Tripwire at your feet. Step over. Miller looked down. A thin, rusted wire was pulled taut across the mud, connected to a fragmentation grenade. He hadn't seen it. The voice was threading a needle with their lives. Sunray, Miller gasped into the mic as they took cover behind a riverbank. We're running out of steam. We need extraction. I know, the voice said. There was a strange sadness in the tone now. A resignation. I can't get you a chopper, Miller. The storm is too heavy. But I can get you to the sanctuary. There's an old French bunker complex, Grid 44 Bravo. It's defensible. You can hold out there until the weather breaks. Grid 44 Bravo is miles away, Miller argued. Not the way I'm taking you. You're close, but you have to run through the open. The enemy is reloading. You have a 30-second window. Go, now. Miller signaled the squad. They broke cover, sprinting across a patch of elephant grass. They expected to be cut down. They expected the searing pain of a bullet, but there was only silence. The enemy had paused, just as the voice predicted. They crashed through the final wall of vines and stumbled into a clearing. There it was, a concrete ruin, half buried in the hillside, covered in moss, a relic from the First Indochina War, the sanctuary. They scrambled inside, dragging their heavy limbs through the dark, damp entrance. It was a reinforced command bunker, thick walls, narrow firing slits. Perfect. Miller collapsed against the cold concrete, gasping for air. We're in, Sunray, we're in, secure. Silence. Sunray? Miller clicked the mic. Sunray, this is Echo 5, come in. Static. Just the white noise of the storm. Vance, check the frequency, Miller ordered. I'm on it, Sarge. Same freak. He's gone. Miller looked around the bunker. It was dry inside, dusty. It hadn't been used in years. In the corner, sitting on a rotting wooden crate, was something that made the hair on the back of Miller's neck stand up. It was a radio, not a French radio, an American PRC-25, just like theirs. It was battered, the metal casing scorched as if it had been in a fire. A headset dangled from it, swaying slightly in the draft.
Miller slowly got to his feet. He walked over to the crate. The rest of the squad gathered around, the silence of the bunker heavy and oppressive. The radio was dead. The battery pack was corroded, leaking white acid that had dried months, maybe years ago. There was no way this radio could transmit. Sarge, Vance whispered, pointing to a small green notebook lying next to the radio. Look. It was a standard issue field logbook. The paper was yellowed and stiff with old water damage. Miller opened it. The handwriting was neat, precise. Entry, 14 October. That was today's date. But the year written at the top of the page was 1968. Exactly 1 year ago. Miller read the log. 1400 hours. Rain heavy. Visibility 0. 1415 hours. Spotted NVA heavy gun on Eastern Ridge. 1430 hours. Mortar team sighting in on the valley floor. 1445 hours. Tripwire set on the game trail. Miller's hand started to shake. The logbook was a detailed record of enemy positions. But it wasn't just observations.
It was a narrative. 1,500 hours. If a squad comes through here, they'll die on the ridge. If I could warn them. Miller turned the page. The next entry wasn't a log. It was a calculation. Coordinates. Vectors. Timing. The mortars have a reload time of 40 seconds. A squad could make the rock outcropping if they run at the count of 5. The handwriting became more erratic, pressing harder into the paper. I can see them. In my head, I can see them. 6 men. They look like us. They are us. I have to guide them. Miller looked at the bottom of the page. The signature. RTO James Sunray Sullivan. MIA. October 14th, 1968. Miller dropped the book. He knew the name. Everyone in the division knew the story. A year ago, a recon team had been wiped out in this valley. Their bodies were never recovered. Their RTO, a kid named Sullivan, had stayed behind to call in airstrikes on his own position to cover his team's retreat.
His call sign hadn't been Sunray back then, but he was known for being able to read the battlefield like a map. Miller looked at the dead, corroded radio. The voice hadn't come from base. It hadn't come from a bird overhead. They had been listening to a ghost? No, that wasn't it. The radio didn't work. The battery was dead. Vance picked up the headset of the dead radio. He pressed it to his ear. "Sarge, listen." Miller took the handset. He pressed it to his ear. There was no static, just a faint, rhythmic ticking sound, like a clock or a heartbeat. And then, a whisper, so faint it was almost indistinguishable from the wind outside. "Get home, Miller. Get home." The connection cut. The handset went cold. The squad spent the night in the bunker. The NVA never attacked. The storm broke the next morning, and the extraction choppers came in low and fast. As they lifted off, Miller looked down at the concrete ruin disappearing into the jungle canopy. He still had the logbook in his pocket. When they got back to base, Miller went to the intelligence officer. He asked about the radio frequencies. He asked if there were any other teams in the area. The answer was a hard no. They were alone out there. Miller never showed the logbook to command. He burned it, not because he wanted to hide the truth, but because some truths are too heavy for official reports. He understood what had happened. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't a glitch. It was the sheer, focused will of a soldier who had died in that hole a year prior. Sullivan had spent his last living moments analyzing the battlefield, calculating the only path of survival, desperately wishing he could save his own team. He failed to save them. But the intensity of that wish, the precision of his calculations, had imprinted itself on the place. It echoed. It waited. When Echo 5 entered the valley, they stepped into the echo of Sullivan's last stand. He didn't save his own squad.
So, across time, across death, he saved Miller's. There are no monsters in this story, no demons, just the terrifying, beautiful power of a soldier's refusal to let his brothers die alone. War is chaos, but sometimes, if you listen closely to the static, you realize that you are never truly alone in the dark. This is the Sentry. Watch your 6 and listen to the radio. You never know who might be on the other end.